Today we're exploring sticky branding with author Jeremy Miller. Welcome to Tea at Taxevity, where you get insights from insiders who make life better, our many clients and friends. I'm Pramod Sharma, the actuary at the Taxevity Insurance Advisory, and when I'm not doing interviews, I help people achieve financial independence by transferring risks with life and health insurance. As I mentioned at the beginning, our guest today is Jeremy Miller. Welcome, Jeremy.
Pleased to be here.
I'm really glad that you can. You've got this brand new book that's just coming out right now.
It's out right now this week.
And from what I understand, you were in a bookstore at Chapters or someplace, and you saw your book on the shelves.
It was very surreal. I was in there actually this morning.
Okay.
And I went in there's a Starbucks in the Indigo that I go to, and I said, I wonder if my book's there. So I went to the business section, and there it was, sitting down on the third rack, facing out, and I was blown away.
What do you do when you're not being interviewed?
Well,
and going into bookstores.
Well, I have two parts to my job, Pramod. So part of it is speaking. I'm hired to speak at conferences and events about how companies grow sticky brands. And I also work with companies, both small and medium-sized privately held businesses and divisions of large organizations, on how to grow their brands. So I provide the advisory services to grow a sticky brand.
I don't know if you've read The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss.
I have.
Okay. One of the things that he said is that he sold the book before he wrote the book.
Right.
What was your approach to your book?
I did the exact same thing.
Oh, you did?
I remember, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, I read a blog post by Seth Godin, and he said the best time to start promoting your book is 3 years before you've written it.
Okay.
And that's exactly what I did. So in May 2010, I started a LinkedIn group called Sticky Branding. And today that's one of the largest branding groups on LinkedIn with almost 40,000 members.
And in fact, that's how we met. I was a member of that group. I didn't know who was behind it.
Yeah.
And then I kept seeing your name, and then we became connections. But I'm really impressed by how you've made that group grow so large.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And it's amazing to connect with your community and engage with different people. And that's been the philosophy. So go to your question, it's building up that platform, those community, and connecting with people like yourself. That's what allowed me to write this book and get the publishing deal and bring it to market.
Okay, so you already knew that the book would fit the market because you'd already researched the market.
Yeah, this has been an area of interest for me going back, say, 10 years. So if you look at where I came from, I actually got into branding a non-traditional way. In 2004, I joined my family's business. My parents owned a recruiting company. And when I joined the company, the wheels were falling off the bus. And we could see it in our sales metrics. What used to take our sales guys a week to achieve was taking them a month. And this was really distressing for me as I came in as the director of business development, because we were working really, really hard and nothing was working. And what we discovered is that we actually didn't have a sales problem. We had a branding problem. And it wasn't our sales guys that were failing us. It was that our customers couldn't distinguish us from anyone else. And so that's what got me into branding, and that's what got me thinking about this. And where the book came from is I went to fix my family business. We went through a major rebranding process. And I remember at the time wishing, I wish there was a branding and marketing book for small and medium-sized business owners. Because all the branding books are about big companies, about Amazon and Nike and Starbucks. But what about companies like yours and mine that have a marketing budget but not a vast one?
Absolutely.
So when I approached this book, I went to the publisher and I told them my own story. And I said, I wish I had a book like this. And I don't think there's any other books in the market that are doing a good job on it. Would you like to do this? And they were all on it. They thought, this is a great idea, this is a great market, this is a great need, and they signed on.
And you explained the story of how you came up with LeapJob as the outcome of that rebranding of your family business, and it's a pretty interesting story.
Yeah, thank you. It was the company name was originally Miller and Associates. It was an IT staffing firm, and one of the catalysts for changing the company name is Donna and Marcus, my parents, founded the business, and then I came on board. Now there's 3 Millers inside the company. We got too many Millers on the door, so it was the catalyst to trigger that said, okay, we definitely need a new name. But it was also we repositioned the business to make it stand out in the recruiting industry.
Yes.
And so we needed a compelling, captivating name that people would remember, that would they would think I'm looking to leap in my career, and LeapJob just fit, and it was something that I'm really glad we found.
You know about marketing and branding. You're an expert in those areas. Why did you decide to use a traditional publisher?
Well, writing this book, Pramod, was something I've always wanted to do. And
By always, like since you were like 5 years old?
no, in terms of business. So
Okay.
I got when I started blogging for the first time in 2004, when I joined my family's business and started writing articles, that's when I got the itch that this would be something I want to do. So this has been, say, a 10-year dream.
My goodness, okay.
But the reason I wanted to do it with a traditional publisher was two parts. Number one, anyone can self-publish, but you need to be chosen to publish through a traditional publisher.
Oh, that's a good point, yes.
So it creates a higher standard. The other thing that it does for me is its credibility. So when someone sees Dundurn on the spine, and Dundurn's the largest Canadian publisher in Canada, it's a mark of credibility. And so again, anyone can self-publish, but to be chosen is something that not very many people get.
I love the word sticky branding because they stick in my head and they're visual.
Yes.
What do you mean by sticky branding?
Well, when I talk about sticky branding, what I'm talking about is the relationship you have with your customers.
Okay.
People often think about branding as logos and taglines and colors and websites and all
Right.
those kinds of marketing campaigns. But what I'm really talking about is the relationship you have with your customers. So a sticky brand is when somebody thinks of you first, chooses you first, refers you first, and comes back again and again. And that relationship where people are choosing you first and coming back is what makes the brand stick. It's not necessarily that you have the best logo or the best name.
Right.
It's the best relationship. It's that connection you have with your customers.
And having a sticky brand is definitely a great goal. I wanted to ask you some questions about your book.
Okay.
And to do that, I wanted to read some words from your book and then get your comments on those things that really stuck in my head. One part was you said that customers don't distinguish the quality of your business based on one channel alone. They expect a consistent experience no matter where they find you. And when I read that, I thought, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I see a lot of people where they're not consistent. They may be not so good on LinkedIn, or their website isn't very good, or they're not on Twitter. What are your thoughts behind what you were saying here?
Well, where it came originally was, if we go back 15 years ago, was websites. So in 2000, having a website was optional. In 2015, if you don't have a website is bizarre. And so what a company needs to strive for is that every one of their customers' experiences, every touch point is consistent, so that if somebody comes and visits your website, it gives an indication of what it's going to be like when they meet you in person, or when they work with you, or when they buy from you. And if you have a retail outlet, it's having the same in the retail experience, your newsletter, your LinkedIn, etc. So every piece builds on the next to create a total customer experience. Now, to your question of why does everyone do this very well, is I think many companies take on too much too quickly.
Okay.
So they think, I've got to be on LinkedIn because everyone's on LinkedIn, and I have to have a Facebook page because everyone has a Facebook page, and I have to do all this stuff. And they end up doing all this stuff, but they don't do it very well. And so some things are done pretty well, but everything else is done mediocre or poor. What sticky brands that are unique is they prioritize where they create the customer experience. So they have a brilliant website. They have a brilliant customer experience. Their staff are well trained. They know what they're doing. And if they're on social media, they do a brilliant job at that. They are brilliant at the basics versus trying to do everything.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, yes, because it's very easy to get spread out and not be very good in anything.
Right.
Like in my own case, I've decided to focus primarily on LinkedIn because I'm dealing with business-oriented people.
Right.
So using other platforms like Facebook or Instagram, etc., are not really on the horizon. But
Right.
for other businesses, that would probably be quite different.
Everyone's got to make their own choices, and for you to focus on LinkedIn makes a lot of sense because if that's where you get the most fulfillment and that's where your customers are, then you can be very present and very engaged, and they will connect with you again. So they think of you first, choose you first, refer you first, etc.
Here's another passage. You say, the 5 best words you can hear a customer say are, "That's interesting, tell me more."
Right.
And that sounds wonderful. I don't see that happening much in real life. Do you?
No, the companies that do that are anomalies. They have sticky brands because they build a relationship with their customers. They are companies that are always pitching and selling get tuned out. The companies that actually care about their customers to the point where they're building a relationship and they're creating content, like what we're doing today with Taxevity. You are creating content that engages your customers to have them say, "That's interesting, tell me more." And so what can you do that engages your customers in a conversation? If you're not engaging them in a conversation, they're just selling to them, and of course they're not saying, "That's interesting, tell me more," because there's nothing interesting about what you're saying.
And one of the things I liked in your book, and there are a lot of things I like in your book, I guess another one is that it's basically a standalone, that you can read it on your own and you'll learn a lot through it.
Sure.
But there is a section where you have exercises and people can help figure out ways to make their messages clearer.
Right.
And I thought I knew my own brand, et cetera. Then I read that and I think, well, you've got some good points here. I need to spend more time straightening things out.
We all do. Even I do. It's one of those things that your brand is always a work in progress. There's always something to be doing. One of the symptoms of companies is if they have an outdated website, it's typically a symptom that they have an outdated brand. They've allowed things to erode and depreciate. So companies that are really investing and constantly getting better and doing more stuff and working to improve that customer experience stand out. So it's a process. It's not an event.
Oh, good. I feel better. Another line I really like, this is almost like a soundbite or a Twitter size a sentence, is sticky brands win the ties and repeat the buys.
Right.
Yeah. Anything you wanted to add about that?
Well, I think it's so important. So the reason I wrote that and the reason I believe in it so much is that the reason someone buys for the first time is not often the reason that people stay. And so...
Wait a second, what do you mean by that?
So oftentimes there is a need or a situation that we're trying to resolve. And so we go onto Google and we find what options are available and we make a buying decision. And we choose the best option that's available. But then you start working with an organization and you find out the different capabilities they have or the caliber of their people. And you learn that there's other reasons to stick around. And so that secondary buying experience is just as important, if not more important, because that's what keeps your customers coming back again and again. So the trigger event that creates a need is not often the reason why people stay. And so it's understanding, why do people buy for the first time, and then how do you continue to bring them value? And there's two very different buying cycles that are going on constantly. And sticky brands understand that, and they master that, and they invest in both cycles.
Okay, that's very interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. Wow. I love interviews when you pick up something that you never thought of before, and that's one of the insights you've just given me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another quote I wanted to use is also from your book. You say, a brand isn't sticky without repeat customers.
Right.
And I understand that, but there are certain businesses where you don't get a lot of repeat customers. For instance, if you're selling a car or real estate or even life insurance, people are not coming back year after year. So those brands must be able to become sticky too.
They do. So let me tell you an example from the book. One of the companies I talked about is Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals.
Yes.
And so Wheels and Deals is the largest independent used car dealership in Fredericton, New Brunswick. And if you look at the average used cars dealers in Canada, they are roughly $2.5 million in revenue and sell 10 to 15 cars a month.
Right.
Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals is a $30 million business and they sell 150 cars a month. And what makes their brand so sticky is their customers do come back every time they need a new car. Now, people don't buy new cars every year. It might be every 3 to 5 years. But what Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals does that's unique is every year they have multiple marketing programs, but one of their biggest ones is a birthday program. They send out birthday gifts to all of their customers, past customers, and prospects every year.
Oh, amazing.
They spend over $100,000 a year in custom birthday gifts. And they're little acts of generosity. They just give you a gift that is something special and unique and personal. And what that does is those little acts of generosity build up on themselves so that when somebody does need a new car, they get in an accident, their car's old, or it needs maintenance, or whatever it is, whatever that trigger event that caused them to consider a new car, they go to Jim Gilbert's first.
Okay.
Anyone can build a relationship. Most B2B and companies have an itch cycle, which is their buying cycle might be 2, 5, 7 years. It could be a long period of time. But the companies that build and sustain relationships when their customers are not buying are the ones that grow sticky brands.
Okay, so there is hope for people who sell things that don't have very frequent buying cycles. That's a really good example.
And it goes across industries. So what we found in my own family's business in recruiting is people don't need to hire a salesperson every day. But what we wanted to do from a marketing context is we wanted to build relationships with our clients upwards of 3 years before they had a need.
Just like writing a book.
Just like writing a book. So how do we build the relationship? How do we create value so that when that need eventually does come up, they don't think of anyone else? The relationship's there where they like us, trust us, and choose us first.
Because I've had to do something similar with insurance, because when you meet someone the first time, they don't necessarily need life or health insurance.
Sure.
But they may in a few years. But if you don't stay in contact with them, then they're not going to think of you at the time the need arises.
Exactly. And that's where that's interesting tells me more comes in. So how do you create content and conversations with someone who's not buying?
Can you give us a suggestion?
It's like what we're doing today. By creating meaningful content for your customers in your target market that engages them in conversation, that builds relationships. That's the aspect. Now, what you do versus what someone else does will be different because we all have different kinds of connections. But if you are purposeful in building relationships, you will create the right content.
What have you learned while you were writing the book?
Oh, that's a big question, Pramod. I would describe writing a book like a quest. It is a big project. I started this project in June 2013. And it's a year and a half later, the book's coming to market.
Okay.
And it was a huge job. If I were to tell, the way I'd compare this is, remember cram night before university when you had an essay due the next day and you stay up all night and there's the stress and anxiety of that?
Yes.
Do that 6 days a week for 9 months, and that was what book writing was like for me.
Really?
It was intense. So I describe it as a big, hairy, audacious goal. It's a big goal that in order to complete, you have to change. You have to change yourself. You have to evolve. You have to grow. And so what I learned out of the process is much deeper than one key aha. But what it is when you chase and pursue your goals, you not only achieve them, but you grow and advance your capabilities and skills. So if you've got a big goal for 2015, or you've got a big goal for the next year, I encourage you to set it and go after it because you will change and grow and evolve more than anything else.
What kind of responses are you getting to your book?
It's been unbelievable. We've had, before launching the book, we recruited 150 people worldwide to do review and read the book ahead of time before it's launched. And we've been blown away with the reviews. People find it's practical. They love the stories of the companies. They are resonating with the 12 and a half principles and how it's that step-by-step guide. And it's not an academic tome. So we've had dozens of reviews so far, and everyone's finding something else that's a little bit different. But what I'm taking away is they're finding actionable advice that they can apply in their own businesses. And I'm really encouraged and tickled by that.
And I'll agree with that. There are lots of practical tips, and you can use the book on your own, which I really like.
That's wonderful.
What's your main message for the people watching today?
I think the one comment I would have is growing a sticky brand and growing investing in your brand is as much a question of defense as it is offense. In this marketplace today, being average is a quick way to be forgotten. So how are you going to stand out? How are you going to engage your customers? How are you going to build that relationship where people choose you first? So if you can do that, you have a significant competitive advantage because people come to you without even Googling it. And that's an ideal that I think anyone can strive for. And more importantly, I think you can choose to grow your brand. So if you choose to create a sticky brand and then you go about taking the steps to do it, you'll have a more profitable, more successful business than anything else. So I hope the listeners are able to do that.
That's inspiring.
Thank you.
What's the best way for people to reach you?
Well, if you Google sticky branding, you'll come across it. My website is stickybranding.com. The book is called Sticky Branding, and I'm on all the social networks at Sticky Branding. So Sticky Branding is the best way to find me.
Okay, thanks for dropping by, Jeremy.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for Tea at Taxevity. The Taxevity Insurance Advisory helps you understand insurance and bridges gaps in your coverage. There's no premium for peace of mind. How healthy is your insurance?